The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. H.P. Lovecraft. Cosmic horror, the fear and existential dread that results from acknowledging and obsessing over the utter insignificance of humanity, a mere speck of dust in the endless void of space. The desire for weird and forbidden knowledge which always comes at a price. Madness that ensues from daring to comprehend the incomprehensible. And in between it all, tentacles. With this deck, I wanted to emulate that fear of the unknown, the dread of coming to terms with one's own insignificance, watching my opponents spiral into madness when they see their inevitable doom on the horizon. Tevesh Szat is our Lovecraftian cosmic horror entity. Call him Cthulhu, Yog-Sothoth, Nyarlathotep, Hastur, you name it. There is no point in trying to find logic in his desire to annihilate all existence. It is his very being, his purpose in doing so. Thrasios plays the role of our cultist of the deep, zealously serving the Great Old One Tevesh to call upon the end times, but often to his own detriment, as Thrasios makes for excellent sack fodder to Tevesh, so we may draw additional horrors lurking in the library. This is Eldritch Doomsday. Hello and welcome to the CommanDorks. I'm Tarren.
I'm Beef, and it is once again the spooky season with Halloween just around the corner. So that means it's time for some scary deck techs. And we thought, what better way to terrify you, the humble viewer, than showcasing high-power decks?
Ooh, yes, we are definitely cranking up the power dial this time around. In this video, I will be discussing Eldritch Doomsday with the partner pairing Tevesh Szat, Doom of Fools, and Thrasios Triton Hero. But after you're done with this video, please check out Beef's deck tech featuring Eiley PogChamp. The link for that will be included in the description below.
Before Tarren gets started, please check out the OGS Discord server. OGS stands for Online Game Store. There's nothing to buy, but it's just an online store, you know, a place for you to come and play with some friends. It's a great community of fun people to play Commander with on a regular basis. We use it all the time, and we want to test out decks for these videos. Good chance you might even play some games with us. We'll include a link for that in the description below, but please take a second to thumbs up this video and subscribe if you haven't yet. It really helps us get our dorky tendrils across the YouTube algorithm. And now let us prepare for the end times as Tarren calls upon the Eldritch Doomsday.
Let's take a look at the commanders. So we have Thrasios Triton Hero, costs blue and green, or Simic, is a 1/3 legendary merfolk wizard. He has an activated ability for 4 generic mana, which says scry 1, then reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, otherwise, draw a card. Pop quiz class, what sort of ability is this referred to? That's right, a mana sink. Alright, he also has partner. Next, we have Tevesh Szat, Doom of Fools, which is a legendary planeswalker for 4 generic and a black. He has 3 loyalty abilities. The first one is a +2, which says create 2 0/1 Thrall creature tokens. So right off the bat, he is making us chump blockers to protect himself. He also has a +1 that says you may sacrifice another creature or planeswalker. If you do, draw 2 cards, then draw another card if the sacrificed permanent was a commander. Finally, he has an ultimate ability for a -10 loyalty that says gain control of all commanders. Put all commanders from the command zone onto the battlefield under your control. And he also has clauses that say he can be your commander, and he has partner. So, piloting the deck. Short disclaimer, I admittedly cannot take full credit for this deck, as it is based off of a CEDH list called Tentacle Sushi by Sinivi. I'm going to include a Moxfield link for that in the video description, just in case you're curious, but I have taken measures to tone mine down away from being full-blown CEDH and found plenty of space for some more thematic cards here. But that being said, it is still very much high power combo deck at that. The signature card that helps us pull off our thematic win here is none other than Doomsday, which I will discuss at length later on. So, the overall game plan here is to generate oodles of value with card draw or tutor effects that collect our combo pieces and protection pieces that lead us into a win attempt. And in Salte colors, or in other words, Simic with better tutors, we are primed for pulling this off. The starting hand wants to see mana dorks, rituals, or fast mana rocks, so we can work on getting Tevesh Szat out as early as possible and start filling the board with thrall tokens. If we achieve this, Tevesh represents a clock that opponents have to answer rather quickly before his ultimate inevitably pops off. The thrall tokens not only serve as chump blockers to keep him alive, but they also play into other powerful pieces we run, such as Beseech the Mirror and Gaia's Cradle. Notably, if Tevesh dies to his own ultimate, the resolution of that ability will put him back onto the battlefield, so long as I do elect to put him back in the command zone, effectively giving us yet another loyalty activation on that same turn, which is pretty crazy. And then Thrasios is a mana sink to use when we don't need to expend mana for counterspells. Alternatively, it can sometimes be advantageous to cast Thrasios for 2, and then immediately sacrifice him to Tevesh's +1 for a roundabout ancestral recall, if we're needing to keep digging for those answers. But at the end of the day, the essence of this deck is all about the combos. So, and if I were to place this on a difficulty scale for piloting, I'd put it somewhere close to 8 out of 10. It's the thing that makes it tough is Doomsday. Because depending on how the game flows, the way I set up Doomsday could vary pretty drastically. So, alright, key pieces. So both of the commanders serve as key pieces in that Tevesh has that soft win con with his ultimate. Thrasios is a mana sink if we manage to achieve infinite mana. So, but other ones are Thassa's Oracle. No, get your finger away from the thumbs down button. This is a high power deck. Come on. But jokes aside, this is probably one of the more infamous cards ever printed, dare I say. So, just a solid win con slapped onto a cheap ETB trigger. I am not running Demonic Consultation or Tainted Pact. I'm going to make myself actually have to work a little harder to pull off the Thoracle win. So, but thematically, I see Thoracle as kind of another cultist of the deep, using foresight to predict the perfect alignment of celestial bodies to call upon the end times. So, next up we have Finale of Devastation. I like this. It's X and 2 green. You just tutor a creature onto the battlefield with a mana value X or less. But it's got art depicting a cataclysmic event and can tutor a combo creature into play like Thoracle, Ladman, Seaborn Muse. Also a potential finisher if I have a ton of those Thrall tokens and I manage to pump them up for a ton and swing through. That's kind of a roundabout way, but it is a potential win con. So next up is Laboratory Maniac or Labman. Functionally a second copy of Thoracle, but I like the idea of a mad scientist that's gone way too far with their research, pretty in line with Lovecraftian stories. Hermit Druid, similar to mad scientists, madness can result in people being driven out of society, resulting in a secluded hermit finding comfort in the cold embrace of the void. But this is a very obvious and telegraphed win con with Thoracle. I'm running no basic lands in the deck, so an activation will mill my entire library, providing the setup. And then finally, in the key pieces is Doomsday, the title card. This is the ultimate setup for pulling off a specific game-winning combo. I'm going to discuss this in further length in the combo section at the end. Feel free to skip there with the timestamp if you want to delve into that. But yeah, to execute the win with a 5-card combo requires one to know their deck pretty well. Certain pieces being exiled or stuck in hand can impact the way that you set up the pile. So it's just a fun piloting challenge. Moving into ramp here. So there's a lot. I'm going to split them up into sections. So we have 3 lands that kind of serve for ramp. So we have Ancient Tomb, so Tomb of an Eldritch Cultist, gets Tevesh out early. Crystal Vein, this is what took place of Mana Crypt after that got banned. And then Gaia's Cradle. This is just a powerhouse ramp that pairs really well with Mana Dorks and all the tokens that we're generating with Tevesh. So, and the excess mana can easily be sunk into Thrasios. Some mana rocks, so like the Shining Trapsahedron, these are ancient relics to gaze into the void and call upon the Great Old Ones. So we're running most, but not quite all of the fast mana or mana positive rocks. So we have Chrome Mox, which has Imprint, so you exile a non-land card from hand and taps for any of that card's colors. Lion's Eye Diamond. This one is it can be risky because we can use it to try and go for a very early Tevesh play at the cost of getting rid of our hand. But sometimes, hey, you gotta pray to the outer gods and hope for the best sometimes. Next, we have Lotus Petal, which is just a 0-drop small ritual for 1 mana. Mox Amber, Thrasios being a cheap legendary creature makes that fairly viable. Mox Diamond, you discard a land to get that into play. Mana Vault, we don't have any way to untap Mana Vault, but it's just a ritual rock that hurts us over time. And then finally, Soul Ring, a format staple. All right, Mana Dorks. So we've got a lot of Mana Dorks, most of them elves. And you might ask, what do elves have to do with Lovecraftian horror? Well, nothing. You would have me there. They're purely for mechanical purposes and nothing more. But more creatures in play synergizes with several other inclusions that we have in the deck. So, but yeah, so going through them quick, we have Arbor Elf, kind of useless without a forest in play, but otherwise can give us some mana fixing with those dual lands. Elvish Mystic, Findhorn Elves, Elves of Deep Shadow are pretty good to get black out of that. Deathrite Shaman, also really good for fixing, can remove things from opponents' graveyards, exiles our own fetch lands after we put those in the bin. And the life gain can be relevant over time if we're getting a little close, because we run a lot of things that do use our life total as a resource. So Birds of Paradise is just a good flying blocker, but provides fixing as well. Delighted Halfling, just giving that stack protection for legendaries, mostly Tevesh in this case. We have Bloom Tender, fairly high ceiling for ramp. In the graveyard, it's a really good target for Hazel's Brewmaster to exile. And finally, we have Devoted Druid, can tap for 2 green on a single turn if need be, otherwise just a regular mana dork, but it's a pretty notorious combo piece. Rituals, Calling the Weak. So summoning the Great Old Ones requires sacrifice. So if the starting hand, along with, if we have a starting hand with a mana dork, it can be fairly reliable to get Tevesh out turn 2 in most cases. Dark Ritual.
Could say your elves might be cultists.
They could be. Yep.
It seems like they're wearing robes and they have matching little pointy ears.
They're hiding the ears with their hoods.
Exactly.
Nobody knows they're elves. All right. Dark Ritual, very on theme. Eldritch cultists performing rituals, gets Tevesh out early, provides exactly what we need for casting Doomsday. And then finally, Cabal, finally among the rituals, Cabal Ritual, the fetch lands and sacrifice synergies help play into getting that threshold for the extra mana out of it. And then a couple others, we have Crop Rotation, because it's basically ramp if we grab Gaia's Cradle, but if we already have Gaia's Cradle in play, we can grab Minamo, School at Water's Edge, probably the next best choice with that. So other good choices are Ancient Tomb or Shifting Woodland. And then we have Elvish Spirit Guide, which is just, you can exile it from hand to get a free green. Among all of the ramp is Cryptolith Rite, which has art depicting cultists performing some dark rite or ritual. Turns all my creatures into mana dorks that tap for any color, so that paired with all the Thrall tokens Tevesh is making, and other cheap creatures that don't normally tap for mana, can produce a lot of mana for counter magic and sinking into Thrasios. That's all the ramp. Moving into card draw. So, Thrasios himself obviously is card draw. So is Tevesh if we use his +1 loyalty. But we have Mystic Remora, which is our Doomsday fish. Ever heard of the Oarfish? Look it up. It's a real-life fish associated with bad omens. So this is our Doomsday fish. Very good draw piece for the early game. And 6 can let us recur this pretty easily. Gitaxian Probe. Love the art of this version that I'll show on screen. It's a cantrip mostly for the Doomsday pile. Lets us pay life to just draw cards. See an opponent's hand can be helpful. Sylvan Library is a card that's fallen out of favor a little bit over the past year or so due to Orcish Bowmasters lurking all over the place, but nonetheless, still a really good card draw piece. And the art on the one that I have in the deck has some Lovecraftian vibes to it. And we also have Necropotence. Presents a very effective way to dig for answers or combo pieces if we're in a position to do so. If we have Valley Floodcaller in play, we can spend all but one of our life total to just get a ton of cards and then cast whatever we can during the end step, since our non-creature spells would have flash. So fun little piece. And then, of course, Rhystic Study. This is our cryptic library where the Necronomicon is hidden. Powerful, draws cards. Everyone loves to hate this. Windfall is good because, there is some synergy in having things in our graveyard, but if opponents have tutors, or if I know they've tutored for combo pieces, sometimes it can be advantageous to do some hand disruption. So we're packing a lot of recursion to not be too put back by this. And then Notion Thief, great way to steal some potential card draw, lock opponents out of digging for their answers. And best case scenario, we have this guy in play when we resolve a Windfall. So fun.
Didn't they ban a Hull Breacher for that exact reason?
Interesting. It's almost like they're not consistent. Anyway. I don't want to dwell on that. The One Ring is the next on. I like to think of this as our Necronomicon in the deck. Gives us the answers we seek at the cost of life. For this deck, it's another easy way to immediately crack into the Doomsday pile and go for the win on the same turn we cast it. Plus, the protection on the ETB if we cast it is really good for a combo deck that wants to buy more time. Ad Nauseam. So we're staying fairly low to the ground with all of our overall mana costs for spells, so will hopefully hurt us less than normal as we dig, but still has its risks. And I like the theming of it because it's somebody so obsessed with their work that their mania continues in undeath. So, all right, tutor pieces for card draw. So we have Mystical Tutor, which doesn't put it to hand, but it's setting it up for the next draw. Diabolic Intent. Our intentions are sinister, so Tevesh loves his sacrifices, and he makes plenty of fodder for this to be cast reliably. Beseech the Mirror is included because we're ideally going to have plenty of options to sacrifice for getting the bargain out of this. And it can grab just almost any combo piece and cast it immediately if we do the bargain. Neoform. So Eldritch Magic can twist and writhe the body in unnatural ways. Another way to cheat in Thoracle or Labman, Hermit Druid, Devoted Druid, and so forth. And Chord of Calling is an instant speed way to tutor a creature into play. Due to the Convoke, the Thrall tokens really help into paying for the X portion. And this is great for sneaking in a Seedborn Muse. And I like to think of the art as depicting a flying polyp. You Lovecraftian nerds out there will know what that is. And finally, among the tutor pieces, Eldritch Evolution is a thematic pod spell that tutors something into play that's 2 CMC higher than the thing that was sacrificed. So if I sack a Thrall token, that's Thoracle, or a Douthie Voidwalker, and so forth. But yeah. Alright, that is all the card draw. Moving to removal. So this section, I do not include any counter spells. But those can function also as removal, but this does not have those. So we have spot removal in Besieger Who Endures, which is just great to have a spot removal option on a land. Otawara Soaring City, same, a little more flexible, but just bounces to hand instead. Chain of Vapor, 1 mana bounce, any non-land permanents can lead into some dickish lines of play where you and an opponent agree on a massive threat, but then you proceed to use this on one of their threats and coerce them into sacrificing a land in order to copy it and take care of the actual threat that you agreed on. So, anywho, March of Swirling Mist can be used to save our own creatures from a board wipe, but also phase out an opponent's creature if they're swinging out at Tevesh if we want to try and protect him. And then we also have Abrupt Decay, which is a flexible spot removal that can't be countered. Takes care of an opponent's Rhystic Study, other early game value pieces. Board wipes. We have a couple. We have the Cyclonic Rift, which is just really powerful blue board wipe. Culling Ritual is great. Gets rid of opponent's mana rocks. And, with all the tokens and mana dorks that we're running, it's going to ideally generate us a ton of mana for the turn we cast it. So full line of play would be Calling Ritual, following up by casting Thrasios, dumping all of that floating mana into his activated ability. Just one example. But, now moving to Recursion, we have Shifting Woodland. I really like this card from Modern Horizons 3 or Commander Horizons, whatever you want to call that set. Lets us temporarily copy any permanent in the graveyard as long as 4 or more card types are in the graveyard. So, and that's at instant speed too. So this is a way to get a sneaky tech if we have things like Labman in the bin, or in the case of Notion Thief or Douthie Voidwalker, we can respond to an opponent's wheel spell by making this land a copy of one of those. And, you know, we can do similar things with Rhystic Study, Op Agent, Seedborn Muse, and so you use your imagination. Noxious Revival is a really fun recursion piece, as it can be also serve as a disruption piece to stop opponents from reanimating things in their bin, since we can still target cards in opponents' graveyards, not just our own. And if our Doomsday gets countered and we have this in hand, we can just flex by throwing that right back on top of the library. Chthonian Nightmare, which is a very, very Lovecraftian card. It's a less broken version of Recurring Nightmare, which is banned in Commander, but this at least lets you respond to the ETB trigger before all of the shenanigans start, because the ETB trigger gives us the 3 energy counters. Limits you from recurring something beyond mana value 3 unless you have more energy counters. 6 is a scary looking tree fungus thing. Beef and I were in a Pathfinder campaign that I GM'd years ago that centered around Lovecraftian themes, and a bit of a spoiler for that, but the big bad was a fungus Great Old One. So I like to think of 6 as just that, some fungal entity aligned with Tevesh Szat to bring about the end times. But yeah, Retrace is really good to get permanents back, and he's also a good blocker with the reach. Tyvar, Jubilant Brawler, is a planeswalker where he has a static ability that lets us tap our mana dorks as if they had haste. In the case of Bloom Tender or the Thrall tokens with Cryptolith Rite in play, that can matter quite a bit, letting those things tap immediately. And he can recur a creature CMC 2 or less from the graveyard, so something like Thoracle, for instance. A newer card from Bloomburrow, Hazel's Brewmaster. This is a 3/4 with Menace. On ETB and attack trigger, it's going to exile target card from a graveyard and makes a food token. And as long as the Brewmaster sticks around, my food tokens are going to have the activated abilities of the creatures exiled with it. So things like Bloom Tender get really crazy, or Devoted Druid goes infinite with this. So Dread Return. So with all the tokens and mana dorks we normally have sitting around, we can pretty reliably cast this flashback cost. I'm very rarely going to hard cast this, but yeah, you never know what's going to end up in our bin that we really need. So, but yeah, that's their part of a combo line that I'll get into. Okay, protection pieces. So we have Veil of Summer, which is, so yeah, 1 green instant, draw a card if an opponent has cast a blue or black spell this turn. Spells you control can't be countered this turn. You and permanents you control gain hexproof from blue and from black until end of turn. When are they going to give green something good? Anyway, it's a running joke that we have among our play group. But yeah, so this is just a good way to protect our combo lines. So yeah, this is going in the Doomsday pile almost every case. Malevolent Hermit is a fun little one. Decent to have out early game because it's just a miscast effect on a creature. But the backside from the Disturb ability is really good because it says our non-creature spells can't be countered. So really great to have this guy out after we do a Hermit Druid activation. So he protects the next things we're doing there. Counter spells. So, yeah, all of these, you know, like I said, can function as removal, but these are here, I put them in protection. So, Pact of Negation. This is another thing that's going in the Doomsday pile in most cases. So if we're stretching for a combo win and we're banking on there being no more turns afterward, we don't care about the upkeep cost. We're going to try and win. So yeah, that's in the deck there. An Offer You Can't Refuse. It's a very efficient non-creature spell. We're not too concerned about giving our opponents the 2 treasures because we're running green, baby. We don't care. Have all the ramp you want. Is this giving you any flashbacks to Wet Bandits, Beef?
A few, yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, may have had a little bit of inspiration from your deck there too. Mental Misstep is a fun one. It's just 1 Phyrexian blue. There's a lot of things out there that cost just 1 mana, so good to just be able to have to pay 2 life and stop a Soul Ring on somebody's opening turn. So
much to look forward to.
Hey, you won't be the only one. There will be 2 other players with scary decks. So
I'm hoping that somebody else is playing blue, since I won't be.
I have Mana Drain, probably one of the better counter spells ever printed. It's just counter spell, but much better. But yeah, prevents a threat from resolving and ramps you the next turn. So yeah. Fierce Guardianship is a free negate as long as we have a commander in play. Woohoo, wow, this is such a great card that they should have definitely printed. Flare of Denial is probably the more fair version of Fierce Guardianship, where we can sacrifice a non-token blue creature to cast it for free. But, Thrasios being pretty reliably in play, even if, we have Thoracle, we're okay sacrificing Thoracle because all we care about is that ETB trigger. So, that's fine. As long as the devotion isn't below what's left in our deck, of course. But anyway, Mindbreak Trap gets around the can't be countered spells because it exiles from the stack. Has potential to be cast for free if an opponent has cast 3 or more spells in the same turn, but we'll see. That's not as likely to happen in high power. More so maybe in CEDH. But Force of Will, free counterspell as long as we pay the life and exile a blue card from hand. What do you want from me? It's a blue high power staple. Okay, that's all the counterspells. Moving to utility. So, like I mentioned earlier, we have Minamo, School at Water's Edge. This is the only 2 things we're really using this for is Gaia's Cradle and the One Ring. Those are the only 2 legendary permanents that really care about tapping or untapping. So, otherwise it's just a blue land. Valley Floodcaller, small creature with flash, gives our non-creature spells flash. So casting Doomsday on the end step before my turn is very, very good. Another way that we don't have to necessarily rely on Tevesh to crack into the pile. So, Dauthi Voidwalker is on theme. Some Great Old Ones exist in the Void, after all, and after surviving a turn cycle, he effectively steals anything that's going in our opponent's graveyards, can potentially give us an alternate win con if our normal strategy is in jeopardy. So, he can be recurred with Tyvar or Chthonian Nightmare. Mnemonic Betrayal. So sometimes when you attempt to understand the unknowable, your memories begin to betray you. So a good late game piece that can potentially allow us to steal an opponent's win con from their graveyard or just lock them out of their toolbox during our turn. Opposition Agent. This thing needs a reprint and a half. Shuts down our opponents from tutoring their own combos and significantly slows them down. Phyrexian Metamorph is just a really good copy spell. It can come in as a copy of an artifact or a creature, so if an opponent has the One Ring or Bolas' Citadel sitting out there, we can get one of those of our own pretty easily. And then finally on the utility is none other than Seedborn Muse. If we're running Thrasios, Gaia's Cradle, the One Ring, and a bunch of Mana Dorks, foolish not to include this and extract as much value as possible. Mana Base. So we have a total of 29 lands in the deck. We're going a bit lower. Some of our 0-drop mana rocks are functionally a land slot that can be played the same turn as you play a land. We're running 0 basic lands in order to set up the combo with Hermit Druid. But otherwise, we're running all of the shock lands, all of the dual lands, and fetch lands that we can. There's also 1 Battle Bond land in there. For additional fixing, we have City of Brass, Mana Confluence, Command Tower. We do include Yavimaya Cradle of Growth because that synergizes with Arbor Elf and Gaia's Cradle. We also have Waterlogged Grove and Nurturing Peatland as backup draw pieces to crack into the Doomsday pile. Okay, the best part of this is the combos. So, okay, I'm just going to go through a few of these because this is what this deck is all about. So, Hermit Druid. So this is a combo where we need Hermit Druid and 2 other creatures in play on the battlefield. We also need Thassa's Oracle and Dread Return in our library. So we have no basic lands, so we activate Hermit Druid, mill our entire library. Once we have Thoracle in the graveyard, we can sacrifice Hermit Druid and those 2 other creatures to flashback Dread Return, targeting Thoracle for the win. We do have the option of disturbing Malevolent Hermit from the bin for Benevolent Geist to prevent the Dread Return from being countered. So, and obviously the Dread Return is not 100% necessary. If Thoracle's in our hand, we can just hard cast that after, or I guess we hard cast it, wait for the ETB trigger on stack, respond by activating Hermit Druid. That's another line we could do. So, Hermit Druid and Tyvar Jubilant Brawler. So we activate Hermit Druid right after playing Tyvar to mill the entire library and reanimate Thoracle with his -2. That's another way we can get that. I mentioned earlier, Notion Thief with Windfall can be a soft win con by emptying our opponent's hands. Mentioned also that Finale of Devastation with X 10 or higher is going to give whatever it tutors haste and then buff up all of our other creatures like those Thrall tokens and Dorks that we have. Seedborn Muse along with Thrasios just lets us constantly have counterspell mana up and then sink that into Thrasios when it's not spent. Seedborn Muse with Cryptolith Rite and the Thrall tokens just equals a ton of mana over time. Gaia's Cradle with Minamo and Thrasios is just a lot of mana, but if you throw Seedborn Muse on top of all of that, I'm tapping Gaia's Cradle twice on each player's turn. So, I mean, that's not infinite mana, but if it's left unchecked, we're probably going to dig into our win con eventually. So, Mnemonic Betrayal along with Gaia's Cradle just gives, because the mana can be spent, any mana of any color can be spent with Mnemonic Betrayal, so that helps open up potential win cons. Devoted Druid in Graveyard with Hazel's Brewmaster, exiling it on ETB's Infinite Green. Okay, let's talk about Doomsday. So it's a 3 black sorcery that says, search your library and graveyard for 5 cards and exile the rest. Put the chosen cards on top of your library in any order. You lose half your life, rounded up. When we cast this, we don't want to have to wait for a whole turn cycle to draw into the Doomsday pile. No. We want to crack into it immediately and try to go for the win. Tevesh Szat is probably the most reliable way we are going to do that with his +1 loyalty, but we do have a few other solid backups in the One Ring, Nurturing Peatland, Waterlogged Grove, and if we have the mana, Thrasios. If we have the proper setup, we need to protect Doomsday at all costs while it's on the stack, and dump whatever counterspells we can to let it resolve. If it does, here's a couple of setups just to throw some examples your way. So from top to bottom, Gitaxian Probe, Veil of Summer, Thoracle, Pact of Negation, and Noxious Revival. So Tevesh draws the 2 cards, giving us Gitaxian Probe and Veil of Summer. We go for Git Probe, paying the 2 life to draw another card, which is Thoracle. And if an opponent tries to disrupt this, we protect the Gitaxian Probe with Veil of Summer. Or if we only still have Veil with Thoracle in hand, we can protect Thoracle with Veil. And then the next card on top of the library is Pact of Negation as a backup counterspell, and Noxious Revival is there in case Thoracle gets countered. We can just put Thoracle right back on top of the library and attempt the next turn. So another example is like Git Probe, Lion's Eye Diamond, Dread Return, fetch land in any fetchable land. Ideal setup if we have Thoracle in our hand and need a way to discard it in order to recur it. So, you know, we sacrifice Lion's Eye Diamond to get Thoracle in the graveyard and then go for the Dread Return line if we can. So, anyway, that's just a couple examples of the Doomsday piles. But like I said, that, you know, the way the game flows, if like Thoracle got exiled or, you know, Labman also got exiled, that's going to really change what we decide to do. Maybe we don't want to do it. You know, if we don't really have a clear-cut win with Doomsday, then maybe it's just a dead card in the hand. So, all depends on the way the game shakes out. So, okay, weaknesses and challenges with the deck. If Thoracle gets exiled, but heaven forbid both Thoracle and Labman are gone, we are in a tough place. Effects that exile my cards face down can make it difficult to assess whether or not it's even worth going for Doomsday, and can change the win con. Countering or removing an early Tevesh play can be a big setback for us, especially when we're likely committing a lot of resources to get him out early, with like Crystal Vein, Rituals, or the Hail Mary that is Lion's Eye Diamond. Since we are not running any basic lands, spells like Path to Exile, Assassin's Trophy, or Demolition Field offer no upside for us when they're used on us. Furthermore, things like Back to Basics, Blood Moon, and Magus of the Moon are must counter spells for this deck. If those resolve and we don't have any floating mana to remove it, we might as well scoop. But hey, that's the risk we take when we're running the Hermit Druid line. So, but yeah, that is Eldritch Doomsday. This is gonna be a fun one. We'll see who we
It's
get.
gonna be a spicy game. I'm excited.
We'll see who we get for guests too, because who knows what other monstrosities we'll be up against. So
Yeah, high power decks. Things can get pretty spicy.
thanks to all who watched all the way through. Again, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe. We'll be back with more deck techs and gameplay streams and videos down the line. So thank you again.
Quick final shout out to our Patreon patron Crash. We appreciate you. If you'd like to join our Patreon, there'll be a link down below.
Give us comments in the below. What do you think? Is there something that we were not accounting for in our decks? Just let us know if you've got suggestions.
Something we're missing.
Yeah, are we missing?
Maybe
Is there
there's a
something
piece
we're
we're
not
missing.
seeing? Yeah. So, but yeah, please chime in. We're all ears. We're happy to improve. Where we can. So.